Hello everybody. Here to do a nice little tour for you today. We're actually a beautiful little lookout here in Inwood, Manhattan. Gonna do a nice little history tour of the neighborhood. Phil, how are you?
I'm great.
Got old Phil with me here today. It's gonna be nice. Before we start, guys, check out the Patreon. Huge help. That's how I fund these things. That's how we're gonna keep growing all that stuff. There's extras on there. Also, you know, like and subscribe, that whole thing. If you see more one of these, come on, just go ahead and hit it now. Make it easy. That being said, guys, we got a ton of stuff to cover, baby. This is gonna be a long one. Well, not a long one, like, you know, relax. But it's gonna be good. And it is hot today. Holy Lord, I gotta get moving. It's hot. The last throes of summer, the death throes of summer. But yeah. What do you think, Phil? Should we just get moving?
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
Let's do it. All right, we're here at our first stop. I'm in Inwood Hill Park at the north end of Inwood, here along the Harlem River, which separates Manhattan from the Bronx. All of this was kind of dredged up and to make the Harlem River so actual commercial boats could pass through at the end of the 1800s. But in this park is kind of where it all began. Literally, this is where the whole, I guess, the whole project of New Amsterdam began. They say, right here nearby is Shorecopic Rock. They say that's the spot where Peter Minuit bought the land of Manhattan from the Lenape Native Americans who were here before for the grand total of what they say was 60 guilders. 60 guilders. Someone put the arbitrary number of $24 as the exchange rate, but it's not correct. In fact, some scholars have actually said it's closer to a few $100. Either way, 60 guilders a month today would get you, you know, a dumpster in Westchester with 6 roommates. So it's nothing, it's not a lot, especially for a whole island of Manhattan. But this area was inhabited by Native Americans. Behind me, you have a bunch of these rock formations, which as late as the 1880s, a man named Alexander Chenoweth used to excavate and look around this area for stuff, and he'd find arrowheads, all kinds of things here, because this is where the Native Americans used to basically shelter and keep some of their stuff. And these were all kind of revealed when the Wisconsin Glacier made its way out to the Atlantic Ocean during the end of the Ice Age, like 30,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, a long time either way. And it basically scraped up lots of different land over time and revealed a lot of the rocks and rock formations here. So this guy, Alexander Chenoweth, would come here and keep all of these body parts and skeletons and things just in his shed here where he lived. Kids would probably walk by his house and be like, that's where old man Chenoweth lives. Careful, everybody. He's got a dead bodies in his shed. And they weren't lying because that's what he did. But eventually, you know, it became more formalized and stuff. But initially, it was all just amateur archaeologists finding stuff in this area. Kind of crazy. As late as the 1950s, they were finding arrowheads and stuff in these little rock formations. And here in this park, actually, every year they still do the Drums Along the Hudson Festival every year, where, you know, have different Native American traditions and reenactments, all kinds of stuff, which is also very interesting. Why don't we check it out and look inside? Let's take a big tour, huh? Of one of these nice dwellings. Okay. They've also excavated and found other things. In fact, just building a building in 1925, they found a mastodon jaw and teeth. And this man named C.C. Moop from the Natural History Museum came up here to retrieve it. And guess what? The milkman had stolen it. The milkman stole the jaw. He was able to take a couple teeth and head back to his Natural History Museum, except he got pickpocketed on the way there. So he gets back to the Natural History Museum. They're like, hey, what the hell happened? And he's like, you won't believe it. A milkman stole the jaw and I got pickpocketed on the way to the subway. Also in this area, there's Revolutionary War history. Just to the north here in the same park, there is an area called Fort Cockhill. Grow up, Phil. I saw you cracking a smile. Fort Cockhill, everybody. That's what it's called. But it was built, actually, well, it was taken over in November 16th, 1776. This is by the time then that Washington was booted out of here. He had gone, left the city, and they set up different huts and things like that. In fact, I'm going to talk about this at our next stop. But yeah, the German and Hessian troops kind of set up shop here. And, you know, it has a little cannon, it had two little cannons and everything. It was set up by the Continental Army on their way out. But there's all kinds of history just in Inwood Hill Park. It's also a very beautiful park, 196 acres. But yeah, here you have the rock formations, little caves. Well, this is all pretty cool. Rock formations here, Inwood Hill Park. You know, nice place to go hiking. Yeah, it feels like we're in like the wilderness here. It feels like at any moment you're gonna come across, you know, a bunch of toothless, shirtless people playing the banjo or something and grilling human flesh. All right, that's sick. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, so Inwood, for most of its history, actually, has been farmland. I'm actually at the Dyckman Farmhouse, which was built in 1784. In fact, Jan Dyckman, the original Dyckman, came to New Amsterdam, when it was still New Amsterdam, in 1661. His descendants lived here up until actually the Revolutionary War, which we talked about, the battle that passed through here and all that. Well, it was originally located a little north and it was destroyed when William Dyckman came back after they had been booted along with all the Continental Army. They came back and found that it was destroyed, so he rebuilt it in 1784, which is pretty cool. So his descendants kind of take hold of it. It's a pretty, you know, it goes through a few iterations. His son, Jacobus Dyckman, takes it and then he hands it down. His son actually died, so it goes to his grandson, James Frederick Smith, only on the condition that he changes his name to Dyckman. Last name to Dyckman, not just one word Dyckman, but he changes it, and that was like the ultimate power move for your in-laws to pull, but he did. Then Jacobus's descendants actually rebought the house after it had been kind of sold off, a lot of lots of the original 250 acres, by the way. That's what this was sitting on, 250 acres. That's a lot, man, up here in New York. Just to give you an idea, imagine 1 acre, now multiply it by 250. But they had sold off a lot of the lots, and in 1915, the daughters and these descendants bought the little house so they could turn it into a museum, which is what it is today. And in fact, I'm standing next to a Hessian hut that was excavated here. There were dozens of these little huts created by Hessian troops that had been hired by the British. Hessian because of the Hessen Castle area of Germany where they came from. They had these all excavated, and they recreated one here, which is pretty cool here at the museum. So pretty awesome, and a nice little house. You don't see many houses like this here, and it's actually the oldest house in Manhattan, one of the oldest houses in New York, and you don't see many like this. This is way nicer than my first apartment in New York, where I lived in, you know, Nolita with 7 roommates, 10 if you count the mice. But this place beats the hell out of it. It's now a museum. You can go inside. Very, very cool little place. Lots of little memorabilia and whatnot, and merch. Always get some merch. Sick merch. Phil, what do you think? Pretty cool. We got to go inside and check it out.
Yeah, I think it was a fun tour.
Fun tour. But we still got more to do, so don't get too comfortable. Let's keep it moving. All right, so I'm here in my next spot, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Tom, you're just in front of a chain link fence. That's really weird. But that's okay, because there used to be something here very important. This is actually where in 1903 they discovered a slave burial ground. 36 people had been buried here. They excavated and stacked their bones up like they were, you know, plastic toys, like in a pyramid and everything. This, like other ones in the city, I talked about this in my slavery and racism video, you should check that one out. They found another one in Lower Manhattan because these things weren't put on maps, because they didn't give a crap. In fact, in New York City, they hadn't abolished slavery until 1827, which is pretty late, by the way. And at one point, New York City was the 2nd largest slaveholding city in the United States, behind only Charleston. That's right, that Charleston, the one that flew a Confederate flag outside of their state capitol until like 10 years ago. So very important. Today it's just a school here. They're talking about maybe putting a plaque or something up. We'll see if they do that. Now you got the train going by here. There's construction going on constantly, but it's changed a lot since then. Not the biggest pick-me-up, but very important to know nonetheless. All right, so by the mid-1800s, this was all farmland, but it was starting to change, okay? So what it became in the mid-1800s was Hilltop Estates. You got the hills overlooking Jersey. What a beautiful view. Jersey, huh? Take it all in. So people started building their estates here. I'm actually here in front of 5063 Broadway, which is the location of the Seaman Drake Arch. Yeah, Seaman was the name of the family, all right, relax, grow up. But this arch was all that was left of a 25-acre estate that was located right here on the hill. A bunch were located here. We were in Fort Tryon earlier at the beginning, but you know, they were all located here on little hilltops. This also started to change in the early 1900s when the actual subway made its way up here. The IRT made its way up here, and that really changed everything. I talked about this in the subway video. You can watch that. That's right. So today, you know, you still have the arch here because once the land was bought in the 1930s, they left the actual arch there because it wasn't included in the sale. So today, it's part of this auto body shop. So yeah, France, Paris. You guys have l'Arc de Triomphe We got freaking Arch Automotive body shop underneath, so, you know, pretty cool. Anyways, so Inwood Hill led a lot of millionaires to set up their, you know, estates here. In fact, it was actually called Tubby Hook before. The neighborhood was called Tubby Hook. It wasn't called Inwood. They changed it to Inwood because, you know, what rich person wants to say, why don't you come up to my dinner? Very fancy dinner, we're having a dinner. All the richest people are coming up to Tubby Hook. So they changed it to Inwood. Tubby Hook sounds like, you know, Peter Pan's second worst nemesis, the one who was a lot lazier and a lot easier to defeat, right? Bill?
A little bit.
That was one for the kids, all right? Chill out. So also in the mid-1800s, as you had houses and things going up here, you also had your first schools, your first churches in the mid-1800s coming up in this neighborhood as well. So all of that was kind of changing. So, you know, I don't know, I guess it's all kind of happening. People are working on their cars, we got a body shop, all this kind of stuff. So, I don't know, we got to keep it moving, baby. What do you think, Phil? Should we keep it moving?
Yeah, let's get out
Let's
of here.
go. All right, so another thing they used to have in this neighborhood was baseball. I'm actually here at what is today the Dyckman Courts, but it used to be the Dyckman Oval. It was a baseball field. In fact, one of the people who ran it and ran a couple of the teams there was Alejandro Pompez. This is a guy who made a lot of money off of running numbers, especially when his main competition and the big number runner in the city was murdered. His name was Dutch Schultz. Dutch Schultz was offed, as they say, as the big mob kids say, because he went after the lead prosecutor. And one of the lead prosecutors in New York, he wanted to murder him. All the other mobsters were like, this is a really bad idea, so they had him killed. To add insult to injury, he was shot in New Jersey. Sorry, Phil, I know you're from New Jersey. And he was buried in the Gate of Heaven Cemetery. How sweet is that? Mobster finally made it to heaven, you know? I guess it was all filled up at the Armpit of Hell Mausoleum, but he made it there anyway. All this to let this be a lesson, guys. Don't go after lawyers. They're people too. All right. Anyways, this was built here as a baseball field, and it was actually really big with the Negro Leagues. Another one of the teams was the Black Yankees, which is, I guess, pretty on the nose. But you know, I guess it makes sense. It's like Black White Sox might be a little confusing. Also, the New York Cubans. That was the name. That was the name of a team, the New York Cubans. I love that. That's pretty cool. I guess they squared off against the Orlando Puerto Ricans. But that was actually, those are some of the teams they played here. People like Joe Louis would come and check out games here. It was a really, really important part of the neighborhood. And in fact, in 1935 was where Babe Ruth played one of his last games, an exhibition game here. And it was demolished in 1938. And today it is the Dyckman basketball courts as well as the Dyckman houses here as well. These courts are actually some of the more famous street ball courts in New York City. People like DeMar DeRozan, J.R. Smith, Kyrie Irving have played here. They have a really big tournament every year. Pretty cool if you ever want to come out here and play. Myself, I've known to play a little bit, no big deal. But yeah, pretty cool story. This was the Dyckman Oval. Huh? So the Dyckman Oval was demolished in 1938 as part of urban renewal. This was basically a program where people were given money to basically just demolish neighborhoods that were considered blighted, and replace them with housing projects or highways and things like that. And it was used a lot in the post-World War II years. But yeah. All right, well, that's it. Let's just keep it moving to the next spot. We got a lot to cover. Bill, what do you think? Should we do it?
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Let's do a full court press to the next spot. Huh?
All right.
All right, so I had to make a quick stop here. This is a very important little venue, I guess, a location here in Inwood. This is the Cloisters. This has been here like this since 1938, but it's the only museum in the United States dedicated completely towards medieval art. Pretty cool. That just means that if you come here, you're not gonna be able to get many cool prints for your dorm room or anything unless you want to play Xbox under a very graphic crucifixion. That's the kind of stuff that's here. So the story is that this guy named George Gray Barnard was in France during around the early 1900s, and he made a huge collection of like medieval art, anything he could get his hands on. You go to like antiquing, I guess, and you get to, you find some like little cross that was made in 1700 or whatever, and he'd collect all this stuff. And then he came back here to the United States after World War I and set up like a little museum. It was bought in the 1924 actually by a man named John D. Rockefeller Jr. Huh? Ever heard of him? So this guy buys it and actually did some good stuff with his money, believe it or not. His dad, you know, bought up every oil thing on the planet and became pretty much the monopoly guy. But his son actually did some cool stuff, and one of the things he did was he collected all this stuff, bought it, and then he built this home for it called the Cloisters. To do that, he bought like 66 acres around here in what's now Fort Tryon Park, all that area, and also bought land across the water so you get your nice uninterrupted views. That's when you know you have money, man. That's when you buy not only your own plot, but then a plot across from you just so you can look at nothing, which is pretty cool. So he did that, and so across you have the little Palisades area of New Jersey where it's like a nice little uninterrupted view, and he set up this beautiful building that's kind of modeled after the European cloisters, which means, you know, where like monks live and stuff. They walk around chanting and things like that. They don't live here though. So Charles Collins actually designed this building. He's the guy who designed Riverside Church, which is down in you know, kind of the Harlem, Morningside Heights area. Pretty building there. But yeah, this is the Cloisters. You can't leave Inwood without talking about the Cloisters. It's pretty important. Maybe I'll do a video on the actual Cloisters, take you inside and all that stuff. But I gotta mention it pretty quick. What do you think, Phil? Pretty cool?
Majestic is what it is.
You are a wordsmith. Let's keep it moving. All right, so as I've talked about in tons of videos, post-World War II, you have white flight. That's right. No, white flight isn't the name of some racist airline. That's an actual thing that happened. All the white people went to the suburbs. And we've talked about redlining before, where whole blocks of neighborhoods basically are completely prevented from getting mortgages for these things. And the reason they're prevented was because they're minorities. Go figure. By the way, this neighborhood was still had farms. The last farm was sold in 1954 by the Benedetto family, which is kind of late. But because of that, you had minorities fill into this neighborhood as well from Washington Heights, from Harlem. Keep in mind, this neighborhood is about 3/4 Latino, maybe I should say, you know, and specifically Dominican Republic. Because we've talked about this, I talked about this in the Washington Heights video, you should check that one out. But in the 1960s, Rafael Trujillo died, he was the dictator over there, and it opened up immigration out of the Dominican Republic, and they started coming here in big numbers in like the 80s and 90s, and this is one of those neighborhoods. It's right above Washington Heights. Now the neighborhood's kind of changing now, as a lot of the neighborhoods that were depressed have, because investments come in. I'm actually standing in front of what's called the Stack. It was an apartment made of modules, you know, like modular, like you know, IKEA furniture. I guess they built this thing with an Allen wrench, but I guess it drops costs, obviously like 10 to 20%. This was built in 2014, and you have other developments kind of going up in this neighborhood. This all relates to, you know, this segues in nicely to 2018, a big rezoning that was passed here, or that was being proposed here in this neighborhood. Something like almost 60 blocks were going to be rezoned. A lot of it were going to be high density residential, and the neighborhood said, we don't really want that. There was actually a group started called Northern Manhattan is Not for Sale, which I love that name. That's like right on the money, baby. That's like, you know, it's not like Coalition for Citizens, no, it's like, you know, Don't Touch Our Incorporated, which I think is pretty cool. But they actually fought, and eventually lost out, and it has gotten rezoned. So we'll see what happens. I think it was only a couple years ago where they finally lost that battle. In fact, Broadway is kind of the dividing line. 77% of the households earning $100,000 or more live west of Broadway, closer to the park, the views and all that stuff. And then 77% earning $20,000 or less live to the east. We talked about Dyckman houses and all that area to the east of Broadway. So it's kind of a dividing line of the neighborhood even today. Keep in mind that a lot of that rezoning is going to affect east of Broadway. Shock, you know, the lower income neighborhoods are going to be built up, and we'll see what happens. I mean, you know, it has yet to be seen what the effects of it are, but that was one of the big things here in the neighborhood, and they fought it really hard, but eventually lost out. So we got to fight to protect these neighborhoods. We got to fight to protect the diversity. That's not something that just occurs completely naturally. We got to protect it, baby. All right, well, I don't know. Let's keep moving and wrap this thing up. We've talked about a lot. Let's go. Oh yeah, hey, we made it to the end. Look at us. We're up here back at the same little lookout. We covered a lot today. Holy Lord, we covered the Native American history. We covered the excavations. We covered the farmhouses. We covered the Dyckmans. We covered the basketball courts. We covered a whole lot, baby, and even the present. I don't even know. I'm about to pass out. I gotta go hydrate. But Phil, what'd you think, man? That's pretty good, right?
I thought it was great. Very educational.
Look at that, son of a gun. All right, well, that's it, guys. I guess if you enjoyed it, like I said, check out the Patreon. I said that at the beginning. Say it at the end, baby. Sandwich. We're bookending, as they say in the biz. Also, like and subscribe. Bump me in the algorithm, baby. And aside from that, I don't know what else to tell you guys. We're here at the little lookout here next to the Cloisters. I'm gonna go home and shower 3 times in a row and chug a bottle of Ensure. That sounds disgusting. All right, anyways, I gotta get the hell out of here. See y'all later. Sick.